Welcome to this panel titled Developer Experience with Account Abstraction. So I think like everyone and every project here is working on something that targets developers, and there's projects who are building tools to help developers integrate with account abstraction. So I think a good place to get started would just be for us to go around and introduce ourselves and our projects, and in particular how what it has to do with account abstraction. So should we just go in this order? You understand?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Ethan, although I go by the alias Tabasco online. I do developer relations at Particle Network. Previously, I was at a company called Chainstack. Been doing DevRel for almost 3 years now, and I love it. And we've been really heavily within kind of the account abstraction ecosystem with our wallet as a service. We just released this concept a few months ago called Smart Wallet as a Service, which is the intersection of MPC and AA. So a lot of really cool things to cover today. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Hsuan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blocto. So Blocto, we have launched our AA wallet back in 2019, and before it was called account abstraction. And like Julian said, it has been treated as a second-class citizen in EVM, and so it's very, very difficult to promote. So after that, we collaborated more with the chains with native account abstraction, like Flow, Aptos, and we are the largest wallets there. And now that the Ethereum ecosystem is getting more interested into providing better UX, we are back with collaborating with EVM folks to build on top of ERC-437.
Yep. Hi, I'm Artem from 1inch. 1inch Network. I'm core contributor. I used to be a UI UX lead, let's say DApp. I developed the app.1inch.io. Now I'm switched to the smart contracts. Just a few words about 1inch. It's not really, let's say, provider of account abstraction things. We are the app that should adapt eventually the account abstraction. So we would provide, we need to provide interoperability with account abstraction. So one thing regarding the 1inch, it's the top aggregator in the Ethereum space. So we work on Ethereum plus 8 more networks, EVM compatible, and about 70% of the aggregation traffic go through the 1inch. So it's kind of unicorn in our sphere. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Nicolas Bacca, so I'm one of the 8 co-founders of Ledger, and Ledger is a hardware wallet company, and after spending 8 years working at Ledger, I realized that if we want to help onboarding the next billion users, maybe they won't buy a hardware wallet to start, because as we discussed in other panels, the user journey is a bit complex and it changes along the life of the product. And so I started a new stealth project to focus on onboarding users as easily as possible using passkeys and account abstraction.
So to wrap up the intro, so my name is Derek. I'm the founder and CEO of ZeroDev. So ZeroDev, very simply put, is a embedded account abstraction wallet service. So if you are building some kind of dApp, you want to integrate with account abstraction, ZeroDev is a great solution. You can either use ZeroDev as a standalone embedded wallet, or use ZeroDev as a AA layer on top of your favorite embedded wallet service, such as Privy, Web3 Auth, Magic, and whatnot. Yeah. So I think as a good starting point of the conversation, I think we can talk a little bit about. So since our customers are all developers, I'm wondering what are some of the key problems developers are looking to solve when they come to your solution and say, "Hey, please help me with AA." Do you want to start?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think at the core of account abstraction, and even basically with what we do as embedded wallets, wallet as a service, is improving user experience, and in this case, primarily through flexibility. So typically, the contrast that I like to give is that with normal wallet as a service, these are things that are onboarding people through social logins and resulting in an EOA, which is great, but there's a lot of problems with this, right? Sure. Most of these problems stem from really fundamental rigidity in how these accounts are handled, which means that while maybe you can onboard people quite easily, actually getting people to use Web3 and to do so in a way that feels natural with a given application is really difficult, even with a strong embedded wallet solution. So kind of our solution to this is what we call Smart Wallet as a Service, and we see developers have a lot of demand for this, primarily in enabling that same sort of onboarding flow, but introducing the flexibility that exists within account abstraction. So a user logs in with their Google account or something through an embedded wallet, an account an EOA account is generated with MPC TSS, and that's used as a signer for smart account implementations, like ZeroDev, Simple Account, Biconomy, basically any traditional implementation. And in this way, developers can integrate really strong solutions and kind of cultivate a very custom user experience and onboarding flow, while of course utilizing the flexibility afforded by account abstraction. That's where we see a lot of demand from developers.
That makes sense. And anyone can pick up the question. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
So I totally agree with like account abstraction providing better flexibility in user experience. And I think that if we want to attract the next billion users into the Web3, we have to provide them with something that they're already familiar with. Like in Web2, they're familiar with things like social login or like freemium model. And these are like, yeah, social login, there are providers that does that, but freemium model is very like, with EOA, it's basically impossible because you have to purchase some crypto first, maybe do a KYC in an exchange, buy some ETH first, and then transfer it to your wallet. And before you actually start using the application, you have to pay.
Sure.
Buy stuff first. And with, I think one of the key benefit of account abstraction is that it abstracts the way the people pay for the gas. So you have more flexible ways, so you can use a more centralized service to do that, or user can pay with their other token than the native token, or like the application can basically just subsidize for the onboarding fee, and then maybe make money later. And these are made possible with account abstraction.
Yeah. I think onboarding with social logins, which Anton mentioned, and then the gas abstraction, I think these are definitely two of the biggest problems that we have seen at ZeroDev as well. So do you guys have anything to add as far as like other problems?
Yeah, sure. On the onboarding side, I mean, the reason why we picked Passkey, for example, is that I think that's the closest to Web3 we had in Web2. I mean, nobody is using Passkey, which is very sad at the moment, because it's a standard that had been running since 2012, and I think only big providers are using it. But today, the best way to generate a key that will solve the backup problem, because in the end, you have a key which is already backed up by your Google or Apple account. So in the end, of course, you have to trust an entity, but you are still running self-custody and you are running with systems that everybody is familiar with. So you don't have to write your 24 words. You don't have to do all the weird stuff that we start when we onboard with crypto. So I think account abstraction is great for that, and we can rely on the best of Web2 to provide security to Web3 users.
Sure.
And something else regarding the security that we mentioned, the ease of onboarding as well. But now we can enforce the security in the smart contract itself. So if we want to onboard people and to make sure, for example, that new users won't do stupid things like sending all their NFT to something, to a link that they received in their email and that they clicked by mistake, we can put, say, this enforcement in the smart contract itself. And I think it's a very big thing to hide all the complexity of blockchain to new users. We can really make things very, very easy with smart wallets.
That's a good point. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just regarding 1inch, we let's say not provide this kind of series of account abstraction API or whatever. But what we have a smart contracts for like routing or limit orders or fusion mode smart contracts, and these smart contracts, they are already ready to work with, let's say, maybe it's like, I would say with the EIP 1271 smart contract interface. So let's say our limit orders already work with Gnosis Safe. It means it would work with, let's say, any account abstraction wallet that would bring in the space. So yeah, that is, let's say, from our side. If you have a wallet and you want to provide the swap features, that, let's say, our smart contract is really a good way to go with. We support this.
That makes sense. So I think I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into passkeys, which is becoming like a very popular topic in AA, right? So from our experience at ZeroDev, social and passkeys are definitely like the top two most popularly requested signers for smart account wallets. So I guess so this is probably like more of a question for Nicolas. So from your perspective, when someone comes to you and asks, like, why should we use passkey as a signer over social? What would be your answer?
I think it's a way to provide an experience which is fully compatible with the web as we know it. So we can stay in a web experience. We don't have to download something new. We don't have to download something that will break the user flow.
Sure.
And I think it's the best way to have an experience which is very unified when you create a service. So it creates all kinds of problems that we can talk about, because when you have embedded wallets, then you run into problems to know where exactly is your wallet. So it creates other problems. But I would say it solves a very big one for the onboarding. So if you want an experience which is completely seamless, where you can just go to a website and have an experience which is fully compatible with Web 2, as people know it, social login or passkeys are the closest to that.
Yeah, but I guess my question is more like, what in your opinion are the advantages of passkeys over social logins?
Oh, okay. So that's more clear. Sorry.
No
So yeah, the big advantage of passkeys, in my opinion, is that you manage a key. So in the end, you are very close to self-custody when you are using passkey. So you don't have to have an additional service where you have to know how you manage to log in, and when you do that, you add a third party. With passkeys, you just own a key. So the same way that you own a key when you have your 24 words, then you own a key which is actually a passkey. So there are a bit of security issues with passkeys that we can talk maybe a little bit later, because if you compare them to FIDO credentials, that we have Clave using enclaves today, so using something that is very close to passkeys, but passkeys today are not implemented in an enclave, so that's something probably that will change over time. But today the key is handled by the application processor. So maybe I'm getting a bit too specific about this, but let's say that in an ideal world, when passkey will be handled by the enclave, in my opinion, it's the best mechanism to use, because then we have a key that is protected by hardware, and we don't add extra complexity for the login.
That makes sense, yeah. So I think Nicolas alluded to how there are currently some problems with adopting passkeys, right? So I kind of want to just expand on that question a little bit and ask you guys about, just from a very high level, what do you guys think are the biggest problems with developers integrating with AA right now? So I guess another way to ask this question is that so even though account abstraction is obviously a very trendy, a very popular concept, but if you actually look at the numbers, the adoption for account abstraction has not actually been extremely impressive, right? I think we still have a very long way to go until the entire space embraces account abstraction. So I guess the question is what are the top problems, in your opinion, that are stopping account abstraction from getting even more widely adopted today? And I guess anyone can pick up this question.
Yeah, maybe I can go ahead and start real quick. I think that there's kind of a few underlying problems here. The first is probably the fact that we haven't really had really solid infrastructure for account abstraction until quite recently. For a long time, it wasn't very easy to work with, and really to have a seamless developer experience needs to be in parallel with the implementation utilization of EOAs. Right, so I think we're actually there in a significant capacity. I mean, of course, spent plenty of time with the ZeroDev SDK, and we have our own SDK, and it feels very natural if you're familiar with typical EOA interaction. So I think we solved that, and I think we took a while to do that. So we're just now at the point where that barrier to entry is gone. Although I think the other part of this, at least from my perspective, is that right now account abstraction is very geared towards use cases that require things like sponsored gas fees or, of course, intrinsic account programmability, so on. I think a lot of the applications being built today maybe aren't completely aligned with those needs. Now, there's a few really strong use cases. Games is probably one of the most prevalent ones that we actually see a lot of active integration of account abstraction within. But I still think a lot of existing use cases, from a purely developer perspective, the benefits of account abstraction might not outweigh the engineering time required to shift from what might be a kind of long-lasting EOA interaction model to an account abstraction model. I think we're at the point now where use cases are being explored, and of course infrastructure is kind of on a level playing field where I don't think it's going to be too long until we get to a much more widespread adoption of account abstraction on the developer side. So I think we're just now getting to that point.
Sure. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think to add a point is that so there are too many differences between EOAs and AA accounts. And in addition to like developers integrated with them, like you have to do like you have to talk to the different wallets in different ways. And also the users and the dApps and the smart contracts, they interact with the accounts in different ways.
Sure.
And so like a lot of the applications won't work. For example, like OpenSea hasn't been working with AA for some time. Now it does, but it takes time. Yeah. So like until we have like complete parallelism between the two different account types, I think it's still like it takes too much effort to switch. And also like the use cases, the applications are currently in the ecosystem are built around EOAs. People are familiar with how EOA works, and there haven't been like new applications that's utilizing, for example, like batch transactions or like session keys that are provided by AA accounts. So I think it takes time, and there are actually a couple of EIPs that like to minimize the differences, but yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, I think one problem is that account abstraction is great for onboarding, but if you want to give it to other users, I mean that are already in crypto, there is still a migration cost that we discussed in the beginning of the day as well. And I think that for developers, another problem is that since the standard is very new, there are a lot of moving parts, a little bit everywhere. I mean, if we just look at what we need today to send a transaction, you need basically to have a contract or something with a partner that is going to give you a bundler, and then you need to have a node because usually you can't have both. I mean, with the same provider, so it adds an additional complexity as well if you want to if you want to integrate account abstraction. And I think there are a lot of little moving parts like this. Like for example, if you look at modular accounts as well, if you look at how you could make your account evolve over the lifetime of the account, it's not something that's settled at the moment. I mean, there are several proposals, several EIP, but it's still a field which is evolving a lot. So I think that, well, we still need more standardization probably to have people getting more confident moving everything to account abstraction. It's still very new.
That's right.
Yeah, I would also pick up let's say, from our perspective at 1inch, we see that, let's say, a lot of our users are professional traders, so they like very care about the gas fees, especially if it's small amount of trade. So at the moment, account abstraction give about 40K gas overhead, which on Ethereum network it may cost a lot comparing to the, let's say, volume of the swap. So if you have, let's say, the user who, let's say, as we previously said, the user who already advanced guy with his wallets, and he know that is cheaper. Now he provide account abstraction, which is more expensive for swaps. So it's hard to convince the, let's say, professional Ethereum user to just migrate. Yes, and for us, we do a lot of efforts to optimize our smart contracts to have like very minimal gas consumption, and actually not we, all the DEX aggregators compete with this. And now for aggregators kind of new stuff, we just have extra overhead, and looks like we need to solve the solution to, I don't have some assembler code for this one, to have it less gas fingerprint in the wallets of account abstraction wallets. Yeah, that is, I would say, key things that also to add from the DEP perspective.
That makes sense. I think our panelists really touch on, I think, what from our perspective are also like the key problems with AA, right? I think you guys mentioned how kind of like the programming model between EOS and AA are just like very different, right? And I think that Nicolas mentioned about how like when you build on AA, there's like an extra set of infra that you have to deal with, right? Like the bundlers, the paymasters. And then, you mentioned basically, just like the inherent gas overheads with using AA and 4227 in particular. So I guess like if we dive a little deeper into a particular problem, which I think, in my opinion, is probably like one of the biggest problems with AA adoption, which is gas cost, right? So I think there are like multiple ways to go about reducing the gas overheads of using AA. I guess maybe we can start again with Nicolas, because I know that like right now, like one reason why passkeys, despite the fact that have been getting a lot of traction, from like just like a narrative point of view. The reason that why it hasn't been actually used that much, in my understanding, is that like the on-chain gas cost of verifying passkey signatures is very, very high. So I guess like what is your project doing to solve that problem?
Yes, yeah, that's actually the goal, the first goal of my team. I mean, when I saw the problem, I saw that, well, this is the thing that we need to solve, and that's something that's a bit complex to solve because you cannot just solve it with Solidity programming tricks. You need to solve it with math wizardry, so that's a bit more less accessible, I would say, to developers. But picking the right context, making the right changes to the formulas that you can use can reduce the gas cost dramatically. And I think that in our implementation, we managed to reduce the gas cost from, I think it was close to 1 million at the beginning, and now we are about 70K probably.
Really?
So
Wow.
that's something that is much more acceptable. I mean, especially on the layer 2. It's still expensive on Ethereum, but I think on the layer 2 now it's completely acceptable. And that's an example where I think we need to have, cryptographers working on the optimizations as much as we need to have good Solidity programmers. So they need to work in tandem for the right implementation. And I think we are going to see more of those problems when dealing with account abstraction, because passkey is an example, but if we want to have proper BLS support for multi-signature or Schnorr or EDDSA or whatever, we need to have also cryptographers working on those implementations. But the nice part is that it's perfectly doable just with Solidity, and the right new implementation. You don't necessarily need to add precompiles and to modify your network, which is also, in my opinion, some step back for adoption, because if we need to have precompiles, then it means that, well, it's a whole different things to push a precompile than to push a new contract. So it's so I think the problem is solvable with the right skills.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's really encouraging to hear that you guys have been able to reduce the gas cost to 70K, which I think is very much practical. On some of like the lower fee networks, like the L2s and the L3s. So I guess like from your perspective, from the perspectives of particle networks, Blocto and 1inch, like when your customers come to you and say, okay, I want to use AA, I want to integrate your solution, but we are just too concerned about how the gas cost of using AA is too high. What do you guys say?
I think so far within a lot of our integrations, we've had some customers that, well, I guess we're free to use it now, so maybe customers isn't the right word, but we had some like users of our platform and our SDKs sponsor like a majority of transactions.
Sure.
And typically, like depending on, of course, usage, this can get quite expensive. And I think like in most cases, because of this inherent cost, what you see a lot of the time is very strict conditional sponsorship of transactions. And of course, we're going to release like a paymaster stuff like this soon. And of course, ZeroDev has a really good paymaster as well. But I think in most cases, the way that our users at least tackle this problem is through that condition. When they use Particle and they facilitate account abstraction end-to-end usually, for Paymaster they use, which is typically soon to be our own or any other provider typically, then they set very strict conditions for the kind of when they sponsor a given transaction, because of course gas costs can be higher, which means that if you're sponsoring a lot of transactions, that can be quite costly. So for most organizations, it's a sort of balance of the amount that it costs them, and of course the value that they get back from that from their users and the result of sponsoring these transactions.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think currently, like, there are a lot of different ways to like reduce the gas cost, and they haven't been utilized enough.
Okay.
For example, like a lot of the transactions, the 437 transactions, they send out like in a single operation forms a bundle,
Sure.
and that's a lot of like transaction overhead. And so like basically you can batch a lot of different operations into a single bundle, and also in some cases AA transactions can actually be cheaper than traditional transactions because you have the power of batching.
That's true.
Right? So you can the transaction overhead is only one, but you can do multiple stuff. Like a lot of the times, like when you're using 1inch, you swap from one token to another, and maybe you use that other token to purchase something on OpenSea, and this can all happen in a single transaction, and that actually, in some cases, it can be even cheaper than EOA.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I totally agree, and I think that like stuff like this is like huge, right? But like you mentioned earlier, a lot of actual real implementations of things like, batch user operations, which is, like you mentioned, being able to even go cheaper than EOAs in some cases. It's a really cool use case. But I think we're at a point now where like large-scale implementation of things exactly like that, I mean, it could change the game for a lot of applications. It just hasn't happened yet. But I think we're in a position now where it's like, of course, awareness and stuff like this. And I was thinking earlier, back to kind of one of the questions that you asked regarding barriers to entry for developers and whatnot. It's like today, you can use like an 1193 provider on Ether or something and facilitate like end-to-end account abstraction from surface level in basically the exact same way you would EOA interaction, and even do things like facilitate batch transactions. But at the end of the day, really what needs to happen is I think as we get more towards consumer applications and of course applications that really value things like lower gas fees in this case, or some other use case that of course leverages batch transactions, we'll see more implementation of this. But yeah, I think we're very excited for how application will leverage this, and of course, we're all on board with stuff like that.
Makes sense. Do you want to add something, Anton?
I think just your initial question was like if user came to us and asked, hey, how to, let's say we have, different situation. I mean, users don't yet come to us and say, please integrate the wallet, so we don't see a lot of people or wallets connected to the app that cannot connect, etc. But what we see that we have like a very good adoption of safe wallet or other multi-sig wallets. So basically, these use cases, they just don't care about the gas. So it's that is not a physical person, it's a DAO, it's a smart contract. Anyway, this, let's say, community and smart contract gonna pay to gas, that is the only way. So it's not possible, to avoid gas overheads. So, and with this we works, we already support these needs for the DAOs. Again, they can put the limit orders from the smart contract, etc., etc. So this already works for us, and just this usage doesn't have problem with the gas overhead. But for, let's say, more retail people, like on new onboarding, I think this, as we mentioned earlier, also that layer 2 perfectly works, whereas just gas overhead is really not significant.
Yep.
So I see maybe the adoption would get first from, I don't know, some Polygon network, from some ZK stuff, something like this. That is from how it looks from our perspective.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think to share my own thoughts on this question. I think when people come to ZeroDev and ask, I want to use AA, but AA is too expensive. Like we do a lot of like smart contract engineering, right? Because ZeroDev provides today, I think today it's the most gas optimized AA wallet out there, right? So we definitely try our best to minimize the overheads. But I definitely very much agree with Anton that I would say that overall, like there's always going to be, like it's always going to be true that using AA is going to cost more gas than using EOAs. So I think the thing is for us to really look to the mega trend in the space, which is like for more and more traffic to move towards L2s and L3s. Right? I think especially with like the implementations with like the cheaper data availability layer technologies like Celestia, tank sharding, like just like gas cost in general, gas price in general will just fall over time. So hopefully we'll just be moving towards a future in which the difference between paying like 0.1 cents for your transactions and 0.2 cents for transactions just doesn't really matter for the end developers and end customers. Yeah. So I think we have about 10 minutes left. So I think maybe I would just like wrap up by asking you guys. We talk a lot about infra, right? But at the end of the day, account abstraction is about applications, right? It's about what people build on top of AA. So maybe like everyone just like say a few brief words about what are some of like the most exciting applications you have seen or heard of that are building on top of it, or that are building on top of it, or on top of AA, or that you are hoping that they will build on top of AA.
Yeah, I think that like really what I'm excited for is ultimately I think in most applications, Web3 is going to be largely abstracted away, where most people aren't going to know. Like obviously that you're using Web3. Account abstraction is exactly how we achieve that in most cases. Like gaming is always the example I tend to go back to. Session keys, sponsored transactions, even great, like in some cases, custom account implementations. OpenFort does this to facilitate like extremely seamless on-chain gaming, where it feels like a Web2 game, but what you're doing is happening on-chain. I think this is really exciting, and applications like this beyond just gaming into payments and DeFi and so on, I think, in my opinion, are probably some of the most exciting utilizations.
How about you?
Yep. So I think, actually I have two. So one is a batch and intent. So like, so there have been a lot of effort put into intent-centric user experience, and a lot of it relies on batching. Like a lot of things have to happen in a single transaction. It better happen in a single transaction. Otherwise, like you might lose the price and like the entire transaction won't go through. So yeah, and batching is made possible with account abstraction. So they actually work very well hand in hand. The other is identity. So with account abstraction, you can actually replace like if you start with passkey, you can maybe switch to a hardware wallet maybe later, and you can preserve your identity, and like people will treat their accounts differently than currently they treat EOAs.
That's a good one.
Yeah, these are the two things.
Yeah.
For me, I would say, again, how I see these things, we already, let's say, have a fusion mode with actually where you, let's say, place your intent to swap something, and then multiple things, multiple transactions, fill of your orders can happen in this single transaction. So we kind of have a solution for the same problems that account abstraction solves, but we already do it with our custom solution with, let's say, fusion, with MEF protection, with also custom batching from 1inch. But at the same time, the other aggregators do it in their way. And what I see, let's say, there is different ways to solve the same solution, and account abstraction eventually might be, let's say, standard that, let's say, all aggregator deals with the same problem to protect user from MEF, to batch stuff, so all we mentioned before. That is like how I see. So we just give a different shape and unified shape for the main dApps. That is kind of exciting if it would become a standard. The other things to say, again, if there is, let's say, certain markets where, what I want to say that if we're able to bring more users who don't care about the gas, or they need to pass QAC somewhere, let's say, okay, QAC maybe, how to say, you can think of it in different ways, from, let's say, more crypto anarchists or more regulated stuff. So it's, very good things from one side and maybe not acceptable for other people. So, but in general, if regulations and QAC stuff bring, let's say, more traffic, more users, also it would be exciting that a lot more people can join this. Plus, maybe it's, again, for big funds that can see we need some, let's say, smart contract where we have different access levels of the manager funds, of deposit, withdrawal of the users. So if this really happens, how we see it now, that this account abstraction is a way to adoption for retail users, for the big companies, and the all unified way for a lot of the apps, it's kind of, looks very exciting, very promising, but at the same time, a lot of challenges of the gas with adoption and see it's, how to say, it does not look like it's that this thing can happen blazing fast. We still need some time for adoption, and big players, small players to have all things in one place.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
How about you, Nicolas?
Yeah, and I think the way we can actually build DeFi that works for people is with account abstraction. Because today we build a lot of DeFi services that is mostly used by degens, like looking for the latest yield and so on. But if we want to build something that looks like a fiat account on which you can get some revenue that beats inflation, the best way to build it, in my opinion, is with account abstraction, because then you have a very simple onboarding from the fiat world. You can pay your fees in fiat. You don't know that you are interacting with a pool which is going to generate some yield with low risk for you. I mean, something maybe like USDC, USDT, and so on, but it's completely hidden from the user point of view, and you can have something transparent that looks like a very, very vanilla banking product. And I think the only way to do it is with account abstraction. If we don't have that, we can't bring DeFi to people who actually need it.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly, big +1 on intents. This is, in our opinion, a potentially transformative use case of account abstraction. We're actually working on a generalized intent model ourselves, and at the center of which is things like batch transactions. So this is a really big use case that is also on the horizon of being actually implemented.
Yeah, I think to just briefly add my own perspective as well. I think definitely share the optimism about intents. I think really big use case, but the thing that I'm really, really optimistic about is definitely what Nicolas said about DeFi, right? I think account abstraction, especially with this idea of transaction automation, right? Because like with EOAs, you have to manually sign every transaction. But with smart contract wallets and AA, especially with like intense session keys and whatnot, you can now offload a lot of like the transaction execution to the protocol and to third parties. So that will unlock a level of trading and DeFi experiences that are simply not possible today. So that's definitely like one segment that I'm seeing a lot of like excitement in, and that I'm personally very excited about. Yeah. So we have about 5 minutes left. So I think this would be a good time to turn to the audience for some questions. Yeah. So just as a reminder, everyone here is building some kind of AA infra that serves developers. So if you're a developer looking to integrate AA, this is like the best panel to ask questions about.
Hello. Thank you very much for the panel. Really interesting. I wanted to know if you had any experience building on different LQs, and if you can compare different experiences on how it worked. Anything you preferred or anything you didn't like about any specific? Well, not only L2, sorry, anything that supports second abstraction.
Sorry, just make sure I heard the question correctly. You're asking the experience about L2s?
Yeah, forget about that. What's your experience building on different systems that support a kind of abstraction, and anything you liked or disliked from any of these systems?
So when you say systems, what do you mean exactly?
L2s, for example, okay. Or building on top of 4337. Maybe you say, I like this about 4337, I don't like this about 4337 that this other AA system supports, for example.
Got it. Anyone want to pick up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Blocto supports different chains other than Ethereum ecosystem ones, and we support Flow and Aptos as well. They do have native account abstraction supported, and it's a much better experience to develop on, especially for AA wallets. Yeah, because like I think two core components of AA is one, you should be able to like validate in different ways in different cryptographic algorithms, and you can replace them. And the other one is you can pay gas like in flexible ways. And with on the chains that do have native account abstraction, these can like this can provide a even better user experience to like most of the applications. And on Ethereum, we don't have that yet, but we're moving toward there. And yeah, I'm personally looking forward to the day that Ethereum has native account abstraction.
I can just some addition to answer to this question. We do also some R&D and play around with this stuff, with account abstraction. I would say that more or less the EVM chains look the same from developer perspective, but I would like know that zkSync, they have some smart contract, like smart contracts for Paymaster and other stuff. So you have already kind of some starter kit that like to pay with the tokens instead of a native currency, native token on the zkSync. I guess the other networks should also have this, or there is other open source repo, but for me it's more or less the same experience. And yeah, if we talk about zkSync, sorry, if we talk about EVM chains and not talk about really other non-EVM compatible stuff.
Yeah, and I think to kind of like to share my own perspective, I think what Hsuan said about kind of like how the native AA chains would definitely give like the end developers better experience is definitely true. But from the perspective of us, just like people who are building AA infra, it's actually much, much easier to support chains that don't have native AA, but rather support 4337, right? Because like basically we build our infrastructure once to work on top of 4337, and now every chain that supports 4337 basically gets our stack for free, right? So in that sense, it's almost weird that kind of like the non-native AA chains are actually easier for the AA infra providers to support. Yeah, so that was just like one nuance I want to point out. Yeah.
Sorry, so there is another question.
The whites. Sure. Question in the back. Yeah.
Hello. My question is, what do you think are the challenges for wallets that want to support account abstraction?
The challenges of wallets that want to support account abstraction. Anyone want to pick this up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can kind of chime in just quickly. For wallets that want to integrate account abstraction, especially if you are a wallet developer yourself, at the end of the day, it's very simple. Our own integration was, basically just a few weeks that it took in total. We really valued modularity, but if you have a set stack of like a paymaster, bundler, and a smart account implementation that you want to use, it really is just providing an interface for interaction with that, some UI elements and so on, and really actually facilitating interaction from the wallet perspective with account abstraction is the same as you would with EOAs, especially if you're using something like I mentioned earlier, like a 1193 provider, or if you're using some sort of account abstraction SDK to do that. At the end of the day, like it really wouldn't only take if you have an existing like wallet implementation, especially like a front end or something like that. I don't see it taking more than a week to add account abstraction.
Yeah, but I think to answer your question directly about I guess like the biggest challenge with a wallet adopting AA, from our experience working with wallet projects, the number one biggest issue is compatibility with dApps, right? So if your wallet wants to become a smart contract AA wallet, then the fact that a lot of like the popular dApps don't currently work super well with smart contract wallets is going to be like a big issue. It's going to be a big issue they run into. So that's my 100% honest answer to your question. Yeah.
I would just add one thing. We answer about if you have a new wallet, so you have all this question. But it's even more harder if you are existing wallet, Trust Wallet or 1inch wallet. The migration is a very big challenge. So you have a lot of users with their EOA wallets on their devices, and now you need to promote, migrate. It's like how to do solve the UX. So if you have millions of users, it's now very challenging to migrate them from existing experience. That is one of the things.
Yeah. So I think since we have limited time, maybe we'll take one last question. Maybe this. Sure, sounds good. Yeah. So I think sorry. Go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Mo, and I'm from Mental Protocol. We care a lot about automation. Like we try to track, calculate, offset the emissions for contracts or individual transactions. Currently, automation networks is something that we're using. I'm wondering account abstractions because the ability to kind of like execute transactions or start off transactions essentially can help us automate, but the gas cost is a problem. Yep. So do you think instead of automation networks, account abstraction could be a valid high volume solution for protocols like ours?
Any quick answers from our panelists?
Maybe just rephrase more shorter form. So what in the end?
Yeah, so my understanding of the question is that they want to use account abstraction, they want to automate transactions, but they wonder if AA can work at scale because of the high gas cost.
My opinion is that, it's not like you can benefit right now, but once you have a mass adoption, you have a lot of users who send their intents through account abstraction, so you have unified interface to automate this stuff. That is like my answer on this. But it's not about more efficiently or friend. It's just about if everyone supports this, so you need to make your automation compatible with accounts, with transactions that go through smart contracts. That is, let's say, how I see it. Maybe there is other opinions on this, or
yeah. And my personal quick answer is that one, sometimes you can actually save gas when you automate because you can batch transactions, right? And secondly, the honest answer is that it's probably not practical at scale for AA on L1s, so you probably have to target L2s and L3s. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to add a quick point. I think in some cases, like it could be even like better to use account abstraction for automation because like with EOAs, you have to send transactions with the identity of each EOA, but with account abstraction with session key, like you can better batch the transactions, and in some cases you can even save some gas. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So we're slightly over time. So let's just thank the panel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Just sorry, just one thing. Keep up for the previous question, and maybe for your one that. About the challenge for the wallet, we all forget about the transaction history. Now, let's say we need like Etherscan that support rendering of account abstraction to be human readable. So each wallet should show the history stuff, and that is also the note for the previous questions. And for you as well, like if you do this automation stuff, you need to think about how to then represent what's going on here. And instead of doing your own UI, whatever what's happened, you can unify it. If there is, let's say, Etherscan with support of parsing of account abstractions, transaction, then it would be like you can benefit from this, but eventually in the end. So like unbatching things that you batch through a unified way to display to the user. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool. All right, so let's thank the panelists, and I'm sure they will be around to answer questions later. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.